Hey there, second graders. It's Mr. Sova here. Remember me? It's been a while. Um, I was walking in our neighborhood yesterday with Jackson, and I ran into a friend of ours, Ellen. And I haven't seen Ellen in 5 years. It was a long time. And it was really, really nice to see her. Really nice to see a friend. Because so many of us aren't seeing each other in person. So even though we had our masks on and we could only see each other's eyes, it was really nice to see her. And it got me thinking about friendship. And that got me thinking about this book, Jack and Jim, written and illustrated by Kitty Crowther. This is actually a book that another friend of mine, Mr. Firestone, turned me on to, and it's a really nice story about two friends. So I'm going to read that today. Jack had always dreamed of seeing the world. Most of all, he longed to fly over the sea, so blue and wide. So one sunny day, he decided to cross the forest and then the hills. On the other side of the hills, he found the sea. Jack was preparing to take off and soar out over the gleaming water when he noticed something sticking up from behind a rock. "Whose feet are these?" he wondered out loud. "How do you do?" said a seagull. "My name is Jim." "I'm Jack," said Jack shyly. "Are you a real seabird?" Jim laughed. "Of course. Would you like to see where I live?" Jack had never been so excited. He and Jim flew together all day. At the end of the day, they landed, exhausted, on a little island and talked as the sun fell into the ocean and the stars began to twinkle in the sky. Very early in the morning, Jim sneaked away to gather some supplies. When he returned, Jack was still fast asleep. They shared a breakfast of tea and fish. Jack ate one fish and decided he preferred tea. After breakfast, they flew to Jim's village. Oh. This was unexpected. I was expecting a village of human beings, not of other seagulls. What an amazing place. Seagulls hustled and bustled about. So different from the forest, Jack thought. I guess if you see a seagull dressed in human clothing, a town full of other seagulls dressed in human clothing isn't too far-fetched, right? After they explored the town for a while, a strange feeling came over Jack. "Why is everyone staring at me, Jim?" "It must be the first time they've ever seen a blackbird," said Jim. "I guess they're curious about you." Still, Jack seemed unsure. Jim thought for a moment. Then he said, "Why don't I show you my place?" "Here it is, my very own home. I built it myself," Jim beamed with pride. "At night, you can hear the waves. It's just like being in a boat." Inside, they sat and talked, each with a cup of hot cocoa. They settled down for the night, and Jim fell asleep right away. But Jack was wide awake. He was thinking about what a wonderful day he had had with his new friend. It wasn't until the sun began to peek up over the water that he fell asleep, smiling. The next morning, Jack and Jim ventured back into the village. The port was teeming with activity. Look at all that activity. "What's that funny bird?" asked old Captain Seagull. "His name is Jack. He's a blackbird," answered Jim. "He lives in the forest on the other side of the sea." "Jack is my friend." But the seagulls didn't like the blackbird. "I'd better go back home," said Jack quietly. "No, you won't," Jim was furious. "If that's the way things are, we won't come to the village anymore." And he led his friend away. It's quite a sacrifice Jim is making for his friend. The next day they went fishing. Jim tried to cheer his friend up. "Don't worry, Jack. They'll come around soon." But Jack was still sad. "And if they don't, I'll come to your place," Jim said. Jack smiled. Jim truly was his friend. The next day, Jim took Jack to visit a nearby forest of fir trees. Jack was thrilled to feel so at home. He spent the day teaching Jim all about the forest. Jack was happy that Jim liked his home too. Late that afternoon, back at Jim's house, Jack discovered a chest filled with books. "I found it washed up on the beach," explained Jim. "What luck!" Jack was delighted. "Have you read any of them yet?" What? Asked Jim, puzzled. "I can't read. No one in the village can." "In the forest," announced Jack, "everybody reads." That night, Jack read Jim his first story. The two friends had no idea that someone was secretly listening. Later, Norbert told his mother all about Jack's stories. "Perhaps this blackbird isn't so bad after all," said Norbert's mother. "Why don't we go and visit him?" She told her friends at the market about the stories and about her visit. Martha and Melissa decided to go and meet Jack for themselves. That evening, Jack read to Jim. A group of seagulls quietly approached the little wooden house. Jack had a fine, clear voice. Look at all of them listening to Jack read. Every day, new visitors came bringing gifts of flowers, fresh bread, and marmalade. Everyone wanted to meet Jack. Now the seagulls greeted Jack with a big smile when they saw him in the village. That made Jack happy. From then on, he read funny stories that made Jim laugh. And all of his new friends laughed too. The end. Isn't that a nice story? It had a little bit of drama in it when the seagull villagers wouldn't accept Jack. And when a book has a little bit of drama or a little bit of tension, I think it makes the book more interesting, especially when the conflict gets resolved like it did at the end of the book. So what do you think the lesson was? What do you think the moral of the story was? Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Does anyone want to build on that? Yeah. Yep. I agree too. Yeah. What do you think? Jack and Jim. I'll see you later for Flora and Ulysses.